Good afternoon it's so nice to see you again. I'm really happy to have a chance to talk with you today. As people may know who are listening, you are the co-director for the Chicago Center for Family Health, and you are a professor emerita at the University of Chicago. In this conversation, we're talking about an element of your perspective that you call flexibility to change. And in the Families Tackling Tough Times Together program, we call it Our Family is Adaptable. So I wanted to begin by asking you to say a little more about what you mean by flexibility. I can see how it might be a very important quality for families, but I'm sure it has nuances in your thinking that might not occur to people. So can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. Um, a very common way to think about resilience is this idea of bouncing back like a spring. But if you're going to adapt to a new condition or things just are not the same again, I like to think of it more like bouncing forward. So, what does that mean? It means that you have to make changes, just even in this case, in your everyday life. And so, what's really important in flexibility is that you make changes in a way that you buffer for children, especially, and elder family members or others who might be disabled. You want to buffer the disruption because it's like, well, we always do this, or we do it this way, or I don't know another way to do it. And so there's going to be a little resistance to trying new things. So there has to be a good spirit about, okay, well, we're just going to try this. Or when I grew up, we did it a different way. We tried it this way. Or asking kids, do you have any suggestions? A suggestion box is an idea for kids. We just want to try things a little differently. And we talked about in another segment about, for instance, family members taking turns, making dinner, cleaning up, having a night off, that sort of thing. But part of this flexibility is an openness to change. Like, we'll be okay. We're not so sure what we're doing, but that's okay too. We're going to make mistakes, and we'll learn from them. And we'll learn about the part that worked well and the part that didn't work so well.
The notion of bouncing forward is a reminder that in many cases we might not be going, quote, back to normal, that there's going to be a new normal. And I'm sure that is going to involve some grieving and sadness. How can you help families think about that while they're also bouncing forward?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like a flow back and forth. That there are going to be moments, maybe in the day or in the week, when people are a little sad. I really miss this part of my life or our life or my friends, and we have to let those moments be experienced and kind of comfort each other. It's hard. It really is hard. And then the other times, okay, there's a lot of talk about the new normal. And people want to know, well, what is it? And part of the new normal is we don't know. It's reinventing what life is going to be like. We'll have maybe some of what we had before, and some of it's going to be a little mixed up. Some of it'll be brand new. Some of it'll be better. And maybe we're going to have a little bit more grief about the things we've had to give up that just aren't going to come back.
Mhm. You talk about leadership and mentoring in families. I'm quite interested in this idea of mentoring. How does mentoring happen in families?
Well, I was really taken by that in all the resilience research on children and adolescents. It was all focused on the traits of the kids that went through really hard times but managed to rise above. But every study talked about there was someone who was like a mentor to them that they could not just look up to, but who was there for them, who encouraged them, who maybe modeled for them. but who believed in their potential and who supported every effort that they made. And so kids need that in families, and we can look to even grandma or who there used to be who we're not in touch with. And I've done a lot of work with loss. And how do you call upon that when the person who was inspiring to you isn't there anymore? But you tell stories. What would grandma say at this time? What would grandpa tell us to do? Or do you remember that time when we were, the family went through that really rough time?
Mhm.
And there was, who was it that was strong, who got us to get up again, or who helped out where we never even expected it? So it's both through memory, through storytelling, and through sharing among each other. What part can each of us play in that?
You're making me think that the pandemic may offer an opportunity for older adults and grandparents to play an expanded role with young people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the benefits that may come out of this, and when I say a benefit that comes out of a hard time, I don't mean that we're glad that this hard time happened. If anything, we would wish it never would have happened. But that sometimes out of the struggle and the suffering, there are benefits that emerge. And one of them is, and this might go into some of the other things we're going to talk about, but maybe I'll just say it here, is that we start to pare away some of the obligations, all the stuff that we've piled up in our lives. I was thinking of it like Marie Kondo, is that her name? The one who is the what sparks joy in your life, get rid of everything else in your house. And I'm a person who I have a lot of attachment to objects that gifts that people have given me or places I've been in the world. And when I look at them, they hold memory for me. So I'm not getting rid of all my stuff. But if we take that into our daily lives, that there may be things that we just were doing way too much. And what sparks joy in our life? There are things we're going to have to do. Go back to work, go to school, things that we don't enjoy, obligations, cleaning the house. Nobody ever wants to go back to that. But so there are certain things you have to do, but there are things that we may decide, no, I want to do less and focus on. And the resilience research after 9/11, after major disasters, is that people all said, we want to do less about making more money. Of course, if you are in distress economically, it's a different thing. But what really matters to us is spending time with the people we care about and things that we're going to talk about later in a spiritual dimension.
Hmm. Okay, thanks. Um, so when transitions are really disruptive, like now, what are some things that families can do to preserve stability as much as possible, given that they also have to adapt?
Exactly. And that's a part of flexibility too. It isn't just change, but I mentioned the buffering of the disruptions, especially for kids. But on the other side of it, and during it, it's establishing routines in everyday life. Uh, Dinner time is really important. And it's symbolic as well as what it is you're eating at dinner. So it doesn't matter so much that it's, an elaborate meal. It can be something very simple. But in every culture, if you go around the world and you go back to thousands of years, people, they sat around a fire together. We're now doing fire pits in the backyard because there's something about coming together and sharing a meal. In some faith traditions, it's breaking of bread. So there's something that is communal that makes us feel connected. And maybe it's a time, and we've talked about this in other settings, of putting aside the cell phones and the other stuff, not answering things, not doing email, of really being fully present with the few of you that are sitting around the table. And even if it's a video, we've done, some video luncheons and dinners, that you're really present with people on the screen like I am with you. I mean, I feel like we're present with each other very much,
Mhm,
even though we're not in the same room.
mhm. That's great. Thank you. Um, you've given a couple of examples of, family routines or rituals. Would you like to offer one more at the end of this interview? Is there something you recall seeing that you thought was really effective or really creative, or something that you really, really like? I don't want to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but you've probably seen a lot of things over the years.
Let me come back to that because at the moment I'm not thinking you got me onto food. So I'm actually the one that I think about, which is the creativity part. I was talking about making dinner together. But what about just let's get a recipe online here and let's try it together.
Mhm.
Um, let's just experiment a little bit. I don't like this ingredient, so how about we put that one in? Let's make a dessert together. Let's make cookies together. We've never done that before. And so it's going to be an experiment. My daughter, last night, she's living alone. She works in humanitarian assistance in the Middle East. And she's stay at home doing her work online. So she decided she wanted to bake something, and she looked in the apartment and there was nothing to use to bake, so she did a home delivery of baking pans and everything else. And so she sent us a picture of banana bread. She made some banana bread because she always remembered that as a child she had liked banana bread. And so she tasted it, and then she called us, and we did FaceTime, and she said, doesn't taste quite right. I think I might need a little bit more something maybe. I said, well, did you use, measuring spoons and measuring cups? And she said, I didn't have any. So I just kind of improvised a little bit. And so the thing is to have a good sense of humor about it. And so my reply to her was, next home delivery order, baking, cups and spoons for measuring. So I think if we take it in the spirit of experimenting, of just trying new things, and of doing it in a household together if you can, and if you're not living with somebody, hey, can we do this? Help me with this, or let me process this with you. Take a look at this banana bread. You can't taste it, but here, let me tell you what it tastes like. So I think we just have to be inventive, and we have to think of it not only within ourselves, but to share that with others.
It sounds like you're talking about almost kind of capturing a little bit of a spirit of adventure about it. Great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me about this topic. I look forward to our next conversation.